These are the best and worst legends in Apex Season 19. These are just my opinions on the legends, so if your favorite legend is ranked low, comment the rage emoji down below. Starting off in D tier, we have Vantage. Vantage did get a buff recently, but it was only adding an extra bullet to her ultimate, which truly wasn't anything to write home about. But even with this extra bullet, it doesn't make her ultimate a game changer on the offensive side for someone like Rampart. While I do like her tactical and how it can be used, I don't think it matches her ultimate kit well like Revenant's now does, which is why I think she needs a good rework to allow her to be useful, because right now she just isn't. Next in D tier, we have Ashe. The kit for Ashe just doesn't do it for me compared to many other legends, especially in ranked. Her portal, while it is satisfying to use, just doesn't compare to other legends with movement abilities like the new Revenant rework. It also doesn't throw you exactly where you want 100% of the time, so I think fixing that could help her kit. Her tactical, while it is nice for the 20 damage it deals, it just doesn't change fights like I think it should. If the tactical got any sort of buff, I would consider moving her up, but for now she's in the D tier. Moving on to C tier, we have Octane. While Octane may be the most fun legend to use for movement nerds, like how I'm practicing to be right now, the idea that he's actually useful in situations like ranked is almost laughable. I mean, Revenant's new tactical can go as far as Octane's ultimate, which is a little cheesy to me. For players at the beginner or intermediate levels, he's not useful. Now, if you're someone like Lemonhead, then the script is flipped because that dude is a demon. But again, for the average player, his kit is not good enough for anything more than just having fun in pubs. And this is from someone who genuinely enjoys playing him in pubs, so for that, I'm putting him in C tier. Next, we have Wattson, and while I've played against some annoying Wattson mains and ranked, they seem to be clueless most times and crutch to their ultimate for getting nade spam, but once the Jhin is gone, it's usually an easy wipe. Legends like Wattson are very situational for using her fences by playing in buildings, allowing you to keep a building or not get pushed immediately because people have to destroy the fences. But outside of some of those situations, she doesn't do much for the team and can't really be played as aggressively as some other controller legends. And for that alone, she's staying in C tier. Then we have Mad Maggie, which was one I thought about moving down because of the nerf to her cooldown time of her ultimate. Even though the Wrecking Ball isn't all that useful considering it can stun Maggie herself or even teammates, putting them in a worse position to begin with. But with that being said, her tactical is nice, especially in a ranked system where ratting in buildings or anywhere for that matter is done more than ever. Her drill does allow to get damage on rats or even have them leave their rat hole entirely. She is fun to use with her passive now that shotguns were buffed this season, and carrying more ammo as an assault character is always nice to have. But for right now, she's staying in C tier. Then we have Mirage, and while getting bamboozled by Mirage is one of the most annoying things in Apex, his kit doesn't do much for team settings besides deploying slight distractions that are easy to find out which is the real Mirage from an above average player. His passive doesn't really benefit much at all, and once you're playing against higher level players who can depict the true Mirage, all of his decoys are worthless, so he doesn't truly hold much value for a team comp of any perspective. Next we have Seer, and Seer got a massive nerf to him this past season, changing his tactical to a stun that lasts almost no time at all, doesn't stop reviving players or taking meds. His ultimate also got a good sized nerf, making it harder to see enemies than ever before, but at least his passive is still somewhat useful. With all the nerfs given to him, I can't put him any higher than C tier because he truly isn't as useful as he once was in the Seer meta era. Next is Lifeline, a legend that is near and dear to my heart. She used to be absolutely OP, but with the addition to a character like Newcastle who has a res mechanic I think Lifeline should have, she isn't as useful as she once was. The care package is nice now with its speed increase a few seasons ago, and you can use it to manipulate your teammates' shields and what you gain from it, but she isn't as useful in a high comp setting. I believe a good Lifeline who doesn't get dropped easy is scary, keeping her teammates alive, but not much more useful than that. I think Lifeline is a few buffs away from being a great team comp legend like she was in the past, but for right now she's a high C tier, if not maybe a low B tier for me. My last slot for C tier is Crypto, and while played at a high level, his kit can make him a very valuable player. But when playing against high skilled players, his tactical drone and ultimate drone is very easy to counter and can be almost useless. Now the 50 damage on his ultimate is nice, and when hitting a team, that 50 damage each slowing of players and destroying all the traps is amazing. I think that's the only thing he brings to the table. His tactical is nice when getting teammates respawn banners, but again, it's easy to shoot out and you have other legends who can craft banners now and have way better other abilities. Until we see a nice buff to Crypto, he's staying in C tier for me for the time being. First in B tier is Fuse. While spamming grenades is great for fights, I think his passive and tactical was more useful than his ultimate. Because unfortunately his ult is terrible, it's inconsistent, easy to avoid, and really doesn't do much for fights. If he had a better ultimate, I think he would instantly move up, especially for ranked, but right now with how bad his ultimate is, he's staying in B tier. Next we have Newcastle. I was debating putting Newcastle in C tier for the sole purpose that all of his kit is just walls, but then I remembered how useful these walls can be in fights. He's not used a lot by higher skilled players, and he's honestly a pretty boring legend to use. Your Q is a wall, your ult is a better wall, and his passive may be the most useful resing players while moving with a wall, but still. It's a wall. Although he's boring to use, he is an incredible support character for teams, especially in ranked where extra walls can be useful. Also, him being a support character is really nice to craft banners, especially in ranked. He does become a better version of himself with a gold shield, but that comes with some luck of loot instead of skill of the legend. Then we have Ballistic. Although his tactical was nerfed, I think he's still in the line of B/C tier, but with how incredible his ultimate can be, I'll keep him in the B tier. I haven't seen many people playing him this season, probably because of the tactical nerf and everyone choosing Revenant right now. His passive is a good idea, but I don't think it has much use unless paired with his ultimate, so it pretty much does nothing. But when used with his ultimate, the passive allows you to holster a weapon that may have hammer point or disruptor rounds, making it an incredible use of kit. Another perk of his ultimate is that it applies to his teammates as well with the unlimited ammo, making taking fights very good. This alone is the main reason why I bumped him up to B tier. Rampart is one I was debating putting in C tier until I really thought about how good her Sheila is, and that thing straight up smacks. Now, while her walls are good situationally, just how we talked about with Watson, sometimes the situations aren't made for the walls. Plus, they're pretty easy to take down without much effort from good players, causing them to be useless in some instances. And the time it takes to put down the walls, it can lead to getting beamed if you're in the wrong position and being almost helpless. I don't have much time on Rampart, but I know playing against her, I catch Rampart mains relying too heavily on the walls like it's Fortnite, and they keep getting caught in the open with their pants on the ground. And her passive almost means nothing since LMGs aren't meta currently aside from a kitted out Spitfire, but because of her ult, we'll keep her at B tier. Next is old Gibby. Gibby used to be a legend that you had to run in order to have a good team for ranked or pubs. His bubble is useful for finishing, rezzing, or creating cover. But with the shift in playstyle recently, he has fallen off the meta train and allowed for more tactical legends to come from the offensive side, or legends who are better equipped for bunkering up like Cat. His defensive side of him, which was his strong suit, doesn't defend like it used to. I will say his passive shield can be annoying at times and get him more defense without much skill, which is why I think he's at least a B tier. I don't know what changes could be made to his kit to better support the current meta of Apex, but if you have any ideas, leave them in the comments. Next we have Caustic, which is a more offensive-minded version of Gibby. While the gas tanks can be good for defense, they are also great for offensive-minded players. His passive allows him to see through his gas almost like a Digi, which is super useful, and his ultimate is a rat's nightmare, dealing tons of damage to teams and buildings if they're not careful. But with this utility that seems great on paper, he isn't picked much, if at all, at the higher ranks and ALGS. I think he's close to being an A tier player, but for now, until his kit is more needed to the higher ranks, I see him in the mid B tier. Next is Bloodhound, which has to be everyone's favorite intro player. It's the first legend I used when I started playing Apex. It was Nick's Mercs as well. Blood is a legend that is not only super easy to use, but also is very beneficial for teams. He's now a better version of Seer with the scans, and the ult is a literal digi threat that scans for the team. I think his ease of use and ability to be beneficial for his teammates makes him a good starting legend, but also one that can be used at higher ranks. While Blood currently isn't in the meta, he's a solid choice no matter what area of Apex you're playing, so I'm keeping him at a high level B tier. And finally in B tier, Valkyrie. Valk. Oh, sweet Valk. She was the legend everyone was using. Pubs, ranked, pro league, everywhere. Even when her ult was nerfed, everyone used her. Until her kryptonite of the evac towers came. Now her strongest ability to get your team around the map and fully disengage a team is tainted due to a specialty item. Her Q is still useful in fights, her passive is great when fighting in buildings and needing to take high ground, but with these evac towers, her ultimate is almost pointless. It's sad to see, especially in the middle of getting her heirloom and her prestige skin recently. But while the evacs are in the game and her ultimate stays the same, she will be a B tier legend. So sad. Moving on to the A tier, we have Loba. Loba can be used in any type of games, especially high level games. Her game changer is her ultimate with her shop. Grabbing loot in end games doesn't have to be as stressful with her on your team. I will say I do believe if you were able to grab one more item from the shop, she could be put into the S tier. Her passive doesn't do much for me though. It is nice to see high tier loot if you aren't going a certain direction and need to change paths because you know it's there, but more often than not, you'll see the loot at some point with opening crates or running through loot pools. Her tactical is nice getting out of fights somewhat quickly, but the delay can leave you vulnerable for a second or two, and it takes a little bit of practice on how to use it. But I think her abilities as a team player truly shows how good of a legend she can be for low level players or high skilled players at any rank. Hell, I see Preds like his Watson using her for his climb to rank 1 or his crazy no shield challenges. Next we have Pathfinder, and Pathfinder is a legend I honestly haven't used much of. So from personal experience, I can't speak much on how I feel he affects a team, but as a solo legend, he seems incredibly fun to use, and I honestly should use him more in pubs to mess around with him. His outplays with his tactical can be incredible for breaking enemies' ankles and getting away from fights, or just repositioning for a better angle can be incredible for not only him but his team to get the enemy to look elsewhere. He does basically not have a passive, which is a little upsetting, but I don't know what he could gain to make it useful. His ultimate is very fun to use for you and your team to rotate early, although not as effective as evac towers or Valk's ultimate. But when used at a high level, he does seem somewhat useful, and I still see him used in high diamond, masters, and pred lobbies, so I'll keep him as a solid A tier player for his redirection and fights, and fun of use for how I've seen him played by people like It's Timmy and Daltouche. Next, Wraith did receive a small buff to her portal, reducing the cooldown time by 30 seconds, making it now only 180 seconds. While this buff is nice, the portal has been in a weird spot of if it was good enough to be a high caliber outplay ability. She still has a high pick rate and you'll see her in ranked a lot. But it's not because of her portal, it's mainly because of her tactical, how she moves, and a little bit of nostalgia for the OG players. Next is Conduit in A tier. It's hard so early to tell where Conduit will fall when she gets settled into her role into Apex, but currently she's being played at a high level and seems to be a fairly easy legend to use. She is almost like a hybrid of Lifeline and Bangalore. Lifeline with the healing and Bang with the speed boost, even though it is activated in different ways. And her ultimate is similar to Bangalore's because it has the ability to stop pushes almost instantly or hold off teams in general. I could see her moving up a tier, but for right now I'm going to give her a solid A. And the final slot of A tier is in fact Revenant. The Revenant Reborn last season increased his pick rate exponentially and it is still very high this season. But this season he did get a slight nerf to his ultimate, decreasing the time extension of the ult for assists. This was 30 seconds prior, but it is now only 3 seconds. The movement of Rev in his playstyle is extremely fun and very useful. Even though he was nerfed a tad bit, we figured out he is a useful character in ranked where we didn't truly know if he was last season. Now moving on to the best legends in Apex Legends, the S tier legends. Wow, that's a lot of legends. First we have Catalyst, and Cat is an essential to most maps when playing ranked. The passive with the doors is a must when bunkering up in a rank system that rewards ratting. The tactical also helps with this, not allowing players to push onto you as effectively when trying to get out of fights or repositioning. These two abilities alone put her in a high B/A tier, but the wall she provides with her ultimate is the icing on the cake. It blinds enemies, creates an incredible cover when rotating in late or middle of the game. She seems to be the most well-rounded legend in the game right now, and I think she's a necessity for any comp no matter who your teammates are playing. So I say learn how to play Catalyst. Next we have Bangalore, and while Bang was much more OP in Season 18, she is still very much needed in Season 19. Her passive, tactical, and ultimate were all nerfed. These nerfs didn't shrink her as a legend, but surely fit her into a role much better. Her double time was reduced by 1 second, her smoke time was reduced from 23 seconds to 18 seconds, and her stun duration was reduced from 8 seconds to 6 seconds. I truly think Bang is still in S tier, and I don't even play her that much. And finally, if you've been following me for a while, you know my favorite legend is Horizon. She's the only legend I have an heirloom with and the legend that I have the most kills on. To me, Horizon is the best legend in the game. Well, she may not be the best, but she is a must-have for ranked right now. Most, if not all, ALGS teams have her picked on every single map. The arguably best player in Apex, TSM House, solely uses her in scrims. Her passive, though, is nothing special, but it is nice landing on spawn or running away from teams on height to slide and get back into a sprint as fast as possible. Her Q is useful for everyone on the team to push enemies on height with ease, although she did get a nerf to be able to shoot while in her Q. And her ultimate is like a finisher in WWE. It will decide who is finishing a fight by sucking the enemy to throw nades at them, beam them while they're being pulled in, or make them destroy the ult and get a second or two to fire at the enemy without them even looking at you. I hope you enjoyed this legend tier list video. We will be going over the best guns in Apex very soon, so subscribe and be on the lookout for that.